Hey everybody, I'm Kyle Aboshi with KGW News.
And I'm Kristen Severance, also an investigative reporter here at KGW.
So we've got a Facebook Live today, taking your questions to learn more about our investigative process. And we've got Max, our producer here, who will help moderate. And when you send us questions, we'll hopefully answer. Before we get too far along, though, we need an introduction here. Kristen, we're really excited to have you here as part of our investigative unit.
Thank you.
You've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, I have. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. It's been an incredible experience. I've been an investigative reporter. I've been a reporter for going on 15 years now. Worked all over the country. Been doing investigative for about half of that. So I was most recently in Dallas, and I was a consumer investigator there, and it's really a passion. It's really a calling. I mean, I think journalism is a passion, but investigative is, you can really help people, and you can really do these stories that affect change, and that's why I love doing them.
Totally. And we love having you here. She's done some great stories already, and looking forward to some wonderful work in the future as well. What kind of stories do you like doing the most?
Oh, I'm going to ask you the same question because it is hard. But I love doing stories where someone has a problem and they need help. As simple as that. And it can be, that one person, but most of the time you can really broaden it out. Because if someone calls us, if they're at the point where they need our help, you know it's happening to other people. So I like to say scams, recalls, and rip-offs. That's usually the stories I tend to go to. And then deep dives in with data. We're working on a story that you started actually before I got here, and I'm going to be doing it on Thursday, where we're looking at football participation numbers across Oregon. So we're really looking at the number of high school students choosing not to play, and the numbers, I mean, they don't lie. There is a decline. I also did, since I've started here, it was a woman contacted us about this dating company here in Portland. She paid thousands of dollars to find love, and she said she was sent one guy who was married, which she was not happy with. Right. And then the next match was a man convicted of attempted voyeurism. Yikes. So she was not happy about that. Right, right. But Kyle, tell me, I mean, I'm so lucky to join such a seasoned team, and to, everyone knows Kyle. Every person who calls calls Kyle. Everyone knows Kyle. So tell me, what are your favorite stories to do? I think along those same lines, when we can help people. We get dozens and dozens of calls and emails, and that's what we want from you folks. If you have an idea or a story for us, definitely email us at investigators@kgw.com or give us a call, 503-226-5041. That's how you reach out. But it really is the individuals that reach out. I mean, these are not powerful people that are calling us and saying, this needs to be investigated. Right. I mean, these are average folks. I mean, they're our neighbors. They're people we see in the grocery store. They're our viewers. And they're just average, everyday citizens who need help. And they call us up and they say, listen, this is going on in my world. And a lot of times it may not seem that significant. Right. You're just kind of like, okay. But we keep a catalog of this, a database of every call that comes in. And oftentimes you'll see kind of patterns. Yes. And you'll see, okay, wait a second, I heard about this about a month ago. And then you look back and you're like, no, actually I've heard about this 3 or 4 times. And then it kind of snowballs and you realize this is actually a big issue that's affecting a lot of people. And those are the stories where, it starts out with just one phone call, but in the end, you're able to expose something or hold somebody accountable and really kind of make a difference. And I think those are the stories that I feel good about. Yes. Let's talk about some of the tips, too, because one question that I get a lot of times is, can this be anonymous? Can I just call in and not leave my name? Or what are your thoughts there? So the tip line here, I mean, a lot of people do call, and a lot of people email. And, going back and looking at some of these calls, like you said, some of the scams, it's a great way to see, oh, the IRS scam is back. Right. That's where someone calls and says, you owe $10,000 to the IRS. If you don't pay it, we're going to arrest you. Oh, by the way, send it to us in the form of a green dot card. I mean, that happens so much. It's a scam. The IRS will never call you. So that's why I love the tips, because you can see what's happening in the community right then and there, and spot trends and patterns. But anonymous is interesting. Of course, listen, if you're a whistleblower, if you're working for a company, if you're working for a government agency, and you see a problem or you want to expose wrongdoing, but you can't give your name, because for fear you might get fired, call us. Of course, call us, but then it's just how we go forward that's going to be different, than someone
who will go on TV and tell us about an issue. Do you agree? It's kind of like how we then handle that when they call us.
Yeah, and I think it's important that people understand, this information is really important. It's kind of a starting point, and that's where it is a lot of times. It's that little nugget that we can kind of unpack and build from there and go and find out, more about what's the problem and use that as kind of a stepping stone. Because a lot of times it is. It's kind of like detective work in some ways, what we do. You get a lead and then you follow it somewhere else and then you go somewhere else. And it's just, that's the fun of it in many ways, is you get to play detective and look and find out where the trail takes you.
And you never know. You never know where it's going to take you. But in terms of anonymous tips, some great stories will come from anonymous tips, or we'll do a story, say, for example, it's wrongdoing in a school district. Then after that first story airs, a lot of people within that school district watch the story and then they say, okay, I feel like I can go to them and trust them and tell them about some other things that they need to look into. So I think and then from there it's up to us to build that relationship and, protect those sources, of course.
So if you have any questions for us right now, go ahead and send us in the comment section. Additionally, if you've got any tips for us that you want to send us, investigators@kgw.com or 503-226-5041. Max, our producer, any questions so far?
Not yet.
Nothing yet.
Send them away. They're ready to answer your questions.
A lot of people ask us, I found people will say, when you have to talk to someone who doesn't want to talk to you, let's talk about that.
Yeah, sure.
So a lot of times you'll see Kyle or I going up to someone with a microphone and trying to get them to talk, and they aren't, they really aren't usually happy to see us. But let's explain, that is not our number one thing. As investigative journalists, we want to sit down with the person and talk to them.
We want some answers.
Yes, we have, talked to a lot of people affected usually by this problem and done our research, done our homework. We want to sit down and have a conversation with someone, but a lot of times they don't want to do that.
And so in the industry, they used to call it the ambush interview. Now it's the unscheduled interview. But it is that moment where you roll up with the cameras going and you ask them a question, and they don't expect it oftentimes. But we should kind of explain to people how that happens, because we don't just show up on their doorstep.
Never.
So, even internally, there's a lot of discussion about how we go about reaching these people, and we give them every opportunity we can. We call them. Sometimes we'll send them letters or emails to say we want to get your side, and it's repeated. It's not just a one-off. Hey, they didn't respond. Let's go get them.
Exactly. Or it's not. Hey, we called them in the morning. 10 minutes later, we're showing up, shoving a mic in your face. We want to talk to the people we're trying to hold accountable. So we call them, we email them, we text them if appropriate. Sometimes, we'll go through other people to try to get to them, maybe coworkers or neighbors, and then if everything's ignored, that's when we have to go.
It's kind of the last resort.
It is, of course, because we want to have a conversation. So if they totally refuse, then we will show up sometimes at their work or wherever it may be.
And the end goal is we want to hold these people accountable. I'm thinking about most recently there was some guy who was selling trailers, like for hauling things or boats, and we reached out to him, we called him. He told us he was in Florida at the time, which we knew he wasn't because he was actually in the building we were sitting outside of. But later we went up and we did one of these unscheduled interviews where we asked him the hard questions, and inevitably he shut down the garage door on us. But it's that opportunity to ask him, why are you doing this? Why are you taking people's money, and not fulfilling their orders? And that's kind of what our job is in many ways, is to hold these people accountable, right?
And we are hoping that if we show up, then maybe they will talk. Maybe they will say, look, it's whatever, XYZ. We're hoping to talk with them. We don't want the garage door to come down, but unfortunately, that's sometimes the reaction we get.
Over your career, you've taken on some big companies, some powerful people. Are you ever scared to pursue these stories or to really kind of go after these people?
People ask that a lot, especially after the unscheduled interviews. And as you mentioned before, there's so many conversations that go into it. First of all, you're never alone. I'm never approaching these people by myself. There's always the talk of security. And I also feel it's different. These people have not taken advantage of me, but you are trying to get answers for someone else. So I don't really feel scared. I don't feel scared. What about you? Are you ever worried about your safety?
No. From a personal safety perspective, no. I mean, I think a lot of times these are well thought out. We have kind of a game plan going into these situations. I think we're always thoughtful, though, and I feel like we give people a fair shake, and that's an important part of this as well, is that, you know, this is not one-sided. We're not attacking anybody. I mean, we're laying out the facts as we know them. And I think that as long as we're fair to people, you know, I'm comfortable with it. And I don't feel like we're catching anybody off guard. I mean, if they've done wrong and we're pursuing them, you know, trying to get some answers, they need to answer. And so for that perspective, no.
Yeah, and I think it's different now. I mean, if you do a story about someone and they don't like it, there are a lot of avenues that they can take to talk about how they don't like the story. Okay, so maybe if they don't talk to you, but then we do the story, they can post on Facebook, they can go on your page, they can go on Twitter. I think it's great. It's great. Put it out there. We have nothing to hide. You know, unfortunately, you know, you hope they come to you, but if they're going to respond to the story, there are a lot of avenues to do that. Too.
What types of tips would you like to be getting? I mean, we do get a lot. We get a lot of scam type calls, the IRS scam calls, jury duty scam phone calls. We get a lot of them. People who have issues with rent, housing issues. But what type of tips would you like to get more of that maybe you aren't getting at this point?
I think, as you mentioned before, I mean, maybe some tips where people are working somewhere or a part of something that they know is wrong, like a whistleblower type situation. They know it's wrong, but they can't, you know, do something about it. Maybe they've tried and they can't do something about it, so they call us, they give us the tip, and we're able to take it from there and run with it. You know, what about you? What kind of tips would you hope to see more?
I think that's always kind of the goal, is some type of public corruption or wrongdoing where we can really make a difference. What I think is kind of cool about our investigative unit, and as you can tell, I mean, it's very casual. We're real people. I mean, that's part of it. Is that not every story is like this. We're unearthing the truth and you're going at. I mean, a lot of what we do is just awareness as well. So, like, we've done a couple stories here in the past few weeks that are maybe not your traditional investigative story. I mean, one of them was like how to be a good witness. So we set up this fake crime that occurred outside our studios, and we had employees that had no idea what was going on, and then we had a guy who looked like a bad guy playing the part. He wasn't really a bad guy, and then we asked them to describe what they saw to help teach people to become a better witness.
Yeah, and it's hard. That story was great. Please watch it, Max. I'm sure you'll post it in the comments.
Yep.
That so much went into that story, setting it up. Why don't you talk about that? That was my first week. I remember coming in. You guys had a whole map on the dry erase board.
Yeah, how we're going to play this out. We kind of planned it out. We didn't want things to go sideways, which they potentially could have if we hadn't thought it through about where this is going to play out. That the bad guy was kind of in a controlled setting, so somebody from the neighborhood didn't come chasing after him and beat him up or call police. We didn't want that. But I mean,
that was our lobby, right? It was in our lobby.
In our lobby, exactly. And we worked with police about how we do the interviews afterwards, with the goal really being to show that people may see things in different ways and that there are some things you can do to really be a good witness. But that's an example. And then, like, earlier this week, we did a story on recycling and how you can do a much better job of recycling. And again, these aren't your traditional, like, hard-hitting investigative pieces, but I think it's an awareness, right? These are important issues that affect our community, and if people can be aware about them, you know, that can be sometimes.
That recycling one was great. Every person in the newsroom was like, "I'm doing it wrong." I was like, wanting to text you, like, "Can I recycle this?" But no, yes, of course. Look, we're most passionate about stories that are going to help people and create change, but we want to do stories that people care about and talk about and will help you in your everyday life. And I think that's the recycling story and some of our scam stories. And but the witness stories, there's 10 people interviewed, and everyone said different stuff,
a little
right?
bit different, It was all over the board.
Yeah.
It was all over the board. Hey, again, if you've got a tip for us, investigators@kgw.com is our email. Please send us there, or you can give us a call, 503-226-5041. Max has a question from somebody.
We've got a question.
Great.
This one comes in from Wayne. He wants to know, how often does a camera cause people to either refuse to talk or even run away?
That's a great question.
Let's unpack that. Go ahead.
Yeah, Wayne. Is it Wayne?
Wayne,
Thank you, Wayne, so much. So, a lot. I would say the short answer. When people don't want to talk to us and they see a camera, they usually will try to do everything they can to not talk to us, I would say, right? I mean, if they see us coming with the camera, they don't like it, right? Especially if they've been ignoring us, I would say. What do you think?
Well, and I also think that it affects those people that you're looking to interview. So sometimes it's even the victims, right? Or it's the people who may be the focus of a story who say, I don't want to be on camera. And that really is the challenge that we face. You know, a newspaper reporter can call somebody, do all the interviews they need on the phone, write it out, and the story's ready to go. We actually need to sit down with somebody, have them appear in front of a camera and tell their story, which is challenging. And maybe we can talk a little bit about how you make people comfortable so that they, you know, because not everybody sits in front of a camera like this and has to answer questions. That's kind of intimidating.
It is. And people will call with a problem. They'll call our tip line and say, I've been scammed, or I gave my money to, you know, a company and they took my money.
And they're embarrassed sometimes, too.
They're so embarrassed. I know. And I always tell them, look, you're not alone. This can happen to anyone. And especially dealing with con artists, I mean, that's what they do. They're professionals at it. But it's interesting when people call us and they'll tell us a problem, and then they'll say right away, but I don't want to be on TV. I don't want to be interviewed. But we need you. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to help you, but we need you to tell your story to help other people. You know. So how do you make them feel?
And that's what I explain to people too, especially in these scam situations, or if somebody's been taken. They're embarrassed about it, and I totally get that. Do you really want to appear in front of the camera and the world and explain, listen, I got ripped off, I was a sucker here? Probably not. But there's real value in it, you know, because so many people will see that story, and I hear this from time to time. We'll do a story about somebody who was ripped off. They come out, they tell their story. And I get call after call after that saying, thank you for that story because I got the exact same call. Or somebody approached me with the same scam, and thanks to your story and the person you spoke with, I didn't fall for it, right? So there's kind of this effect that's incredible when people are willing to tell their story. And it does take some willingness to come forward and some bravery to speak about it.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of these cases with the dating company story I did, this woman, she, you know, sometimes they haven't told their friends. You know, they haven't said, hey, I paid thousands of dollars, you know, to this dating company. So they're not only telling me, they're, you know, once the story airs, all these people are hearing about it for the first time. But it is, I mean, honestly, I cannot think of any time where someone has said, I regretted doing that. You know, all the years I've been doing, I mean, people usually feel better just getting it out, and they help someone. They do it because they want to help that next person.
The other thing is, and I talk to journalism classes sometimes at universities and things, and one thing I explain too is, I'm a human being, right? I'm compassionate and I understand this. And so when we're dealing with victims, particularly victims, but all people really, you know, I want to treat them on a human level and with some compassion and respect. So I'm not looking to exploit that person and say, you know what, we're going to use your story, and, you know, it's not like that. We appreciate your willingness to come forward, tell your story, and you're taking a risk, and I respect that. You know, and I think that's an important point as journalists, and hopefully that the public understands, is that we do respect these people that we're talking to, and we are compassionate, and we understand they're are very sensitive situations, and we evaluate that as well. You know,
of course.
Particularly if they've been the victim of a crime. I mean, there are some strong emotions that go with that, and I think as somebody like yourself and like myself who've done this for a while, you've seen that and you've experienced that in dealing with these people, and that's something that I hope viewers understand as well.
And we take it very seriously. There's just such a serious process goes into this with our executive producer and our managers and our bosses. We take these stories so seriously. It's not flippant. We really, you know, value your trust, and the fact that you called us means so much to us, and the fact that you sit down and talk with us, you know, we just don't take it lightly, I guess. I don't know if people realize that. Max?
We've got another question. This one's from Matthew. He asks, do your stories ever lead to convictions or refunds to people who've been scammed?
Yeah, there have been some cases where they have taken action, and actually, as you described that, I actually thought about the flip side of that. We've had 2 cases here in the past couple of years that charges were either dropped or dismissed. There was a case a couple years ago about a young man who was facing federal drug charges for a marijuana possession case. We did a story on that, kind of discussed how unusual this is on a federal level, and ultimately that case was dismissed. We had another case involving somebody who served in the U.S. military, who's a veteran, who was being deported to his native Korea.
several things happened in that story, obviously, in addition to our reporting on it, but ultimately he was allowed to stay in the U.S.
Wow.
So those are the type of stories where it can happen, and I'm sure
it does.
You know.
Yeah, and those are the best stories. I
Right.
mean, the stories where you really you're telling it, and a change happens. That's why we do it,
Right.
One of the most recent stories I've done. It's one of the most talked about stories. People always ask me about it. It was this whole piece on these serial squatters. I know you've done those too. I think you've done some of those here. But this couple was in North Texas, and they were professionals, and they would go into these privately owned homes, and they would lie on their applications and get in and just work the system to stay as long as possible without paying rent. And they were doing it dozens and dozens of times. That came in as a tip. We started digging, found all the eviction records, found this couple. Then they went to Denver, started doing it in Denver.
Same thing.
Yes, we found them there
Right.
because the landlord did some of her own digging and found our stories. And then just before I came here to Portland, she was arrested. The serial squatter was arrested facing felony charges. So, yes, a lot of times, convictions happen or people are held accountable after our stories.
How long does a story like that take? Because people ask me that a lot. They're like, how long do you spend on these stories?
So really, as an investigative reporter, and you can definitely talk about this too, you want to be on. Gone are the days where, you see the investigative reporter on TV once a year. I mean, you need to be on. People need to know who you are. So you're constantly, juggling between your quicker turn stories where, you may spend a day or a day or two on a story. Then you're doing your stories, maybe it takes a couple weeks. And then you have your stories that you're always chipping away at that, sometimes you can spend months on,
Right.
correct? Like,
Right.
would you say? I mean...
I agree. I mean, you never know.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, sometimes you'll start off in what seems like a pretty minor story.
Exactly.
And then it just goes and goes and goes. And there's another development. There's another person coming forward. There's something new you didn't know. And you just kind of build on that. And those are the stories that are great because they just keep on going and going and going. And hopefully in the end they're resolved or somebody's held accountable, whatever the case may be. But, you never know.
Yeah. And those stories... sometimes you can maybe do a story and go on the air with it. Then you get all the calls.
Right.
So then you realize it's a bigger deal.
Right.
So then, it just keeps going and you're able to spend some more time on it, but you got all the second wave of tips by just getting
Right. You don't know what you're getting from that initial tip until you unpack this.
Exactly.
If you've got a tip for us, investigators at KGW.com or give us a call, 503-226-5041.
Anything else we missed?
I think we're good. But again, we'd love to hear from you. So at any point, if you've got something, send us an email. We're also on social media, Facebook, Twitter. That's another way we get a lot of tips as well.
Yeah, Facebook's really popular. It's a great way. People love messaging you on there, from all over the place. Sometimes it's good to, if something's happening somewhere else, you can look into it here, and maybe it's happening here. So Kristen Severance TV News is my Facebook page.
Yeah.
With your Facebook.
And it's Kyle Boshi as well. So thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Bye. Thank you.